franchise success, franchising your business. What does it take to succeed as a franchisor? Are there any secrets to growing a strong multi-unit franchise system? We have a successful multi-unit franchisee who's going to share his perspective on what it takes to succeed. Rylan, thanks for joining us today. And everyone out there, we're joined by Rylan Miller, an amazing person. Rylan is a super successful multi-unit franchisee. And way back, Rylan and I have had conversations where I even believe, Rylan, you're in the military and you went to a tropical smoothie. That became your first investment. And we'll talk about your story, but for everyone watching this video, if you're thinking about franchising your business, if you're a franchisor, and even if you're a franchisee, right? What does it take to succeed? And we're going to evaluate all of this from the perspective of a successful multi-unit franchisee. Rylan, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, Rylan, I didn't do it justice, but for everyone out there, just to give perspective about what we're going to discuss, give you a brief introduction about, what you've been doing and everything you've been working on.
Started the franchise space 2014 with the first agreement, Tropical Smoothie Cafe. The lead up to that was I was prior military, as you had hinted on. I was a defense contractor for a while. That kind of put the dollars in place to do the franchising piece, and evaluated business over the years of just constant deployments. And you have a lot of time on your hands. TSC, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, felt like the right brand to invest in from a total cost to ownership, with the sales volume and the return on investment there seemed right. Opened the first one in 2016, and we just acquired our 40th location recently. So we're at 40 units in that brand now. Single unit in 810 billiards and bowling. We're really close to opening that. We should be opening that. We expect to do our first initial launch of training on the 22nd of this month, and then open a few days after that. Our managers have already been through the management training, doing that out in the Greenville, South Carolina market. And now just kind of evaluating other things. We've opened a repairs and maintenance facility, more or less as like a vertical inside of our own business, doing blender repair.
There's so many entrepreneurs, founders, leadership teams out there right now. We'll be watching the video, great successful business evaluating franchising and everything you've achieved. I mean, you've just casually mentioned, you went from 1 to 40 units, Tropical Smoothie, right? Which in and of itself, you've impacted your own life, you're building a legacy, you're impacting team members. And so it's a great franchise success story for both Tropical Smoothie and for you. And really the value of why anyone who's watching this video, they may be considering franchising or they've already franchised their business. And so what I'm excited about today, Rylan, for us, and the other background, which is, you're getting to see this perspective of you're now at 40 units, you're investing in another franchise system, your other businesses, and now even considering your own journey potentially as a franchisor. What I'd love to do is, from your perspective, backtrack and really discuss what you believe it takes, either at the leadership level, at the product service level, to create a successful franchise system, right? And people out there that are watching this, they franchise their business about to. From your perspective, where should they be focused?
I would say evolution is probably one of the big things, and that's easy to say, I suppose. But if you're focused on your plan and action now, be ready to change that plan and action here in 6 months. If when you go to implement, it may already be too late. You need to potentially pivot. I mean, we saw that with the pandemic, right? That shift to third party. I think our brand Tropical Smoothie, for example, they did it very well. Actually, we know, everybody was really slow to get on third party. Nobody wanted to do it. I mean, I still don't want to do it, to be honest, but it is, mostly because of the fees, so we see it as now it's basically like a 3 to 4% discount off your sales at the end of the day. And that it impacts the bottom line, and that kind of sucks. But if we hadn't done it, that chunk of sales that you would have lost, 20, 30% potentially that we've seen as a conversion to people going to third party, it's a convenience, right? So I'm a customer. I use it myself. So it is convenient. You pay for that convenience. And if you can't see those types, and you can't always see them, but if you're not willing to change and evolve with those things as they come in the market, then I don't think you're going to make it. That's my opinion, humbly. So I think evolution is probably the most important thing.
Rylan, one issue I see with and I give when a startup franchisor will ask for my comments on their website and their business plan. One of the issues that comes up for me a lot, and I see is, or the advice I give is, your brand needs to stand for something, and there needs to be something special about your brand. A lot of times, business owners will get worried. Well, I have competitors do the same thing. And my answer there is sure. I mean, but it's about the execution. It's about the team. It's about what now you've scaled successfully to 40 units. You've invested in another franchise. You've been considering becoming a franchisor. When you're evaluating a franchise opportunity, what do you focus on, and what should franchisors be focused on when they're speaking to someone like you?
So I'll start with the first question. I've been looking for almost the same exact thing with a small difference, but pretty much the same thing I looked for in franchising a business as a franchisee. So for me, it needed to be, we want to look at the sales volume. What are they doing in terms of sales, the cost of entry, and what that return is. So if just the cash on cash return on investment. For me, a lot of times it's 3 years or less. We've seen that creep up because construction prices have increased. So if the sales volumes haven't matched, then you're starting to see a 4 or 5 year return on investment for some brands. So for me, it's 3 years or less. And then something unique about it, right? Now, as I go full circle, is considering and looking, very seriously at the franchisor side, and kind of gearing up to do that. It has to be, we need to have an offering for the franchisee that doesn't shake them down every month. It can't be too expensive. So it's got to be able to do all those things and not be too expensive. So from a royalty perspective, right? Or like the cost of entry, one of the biggest things to me is, I mean, we're only finally, even at 40 units, we've taken every dollar that I've made, I've put back into the system to rebuy and earn and build new businesses, new franchises, new tropical smoothies, and 810 billiards and bowling. That it gets expensive, and when you have to pay for franchise fees, so those initial franchise fees, it gets expensive, and you kind of go, well, what are you really getting out of that? And it's a business at the end of the day. We're in some ways, the franchisor and franchisee are diametrically opposed. Like, their business model is based totally on sales, and they could tell you that, no, we care greatly about your profitability. That may be true, but if the business model needs top line sales to get royalties, then and as a franchisee, I care about net profit. Those two things they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of P&L. So you need it all to work. As a franchisor, you need it to be profitable, but you also need to be able to earn top line sales. So basically, if you have a low sales volume business, then you're going to need to survive. You're going to need a higher royalty, or maybe you're going to need a higher franchise cost initially to carry you over. And you don't really want churn. We kind of saw that with like Menchie's, right? So you get a lot of churn in the franchise system there. So you're bringing on new ones, but you're also losing older ones. So I don't want that. I want to make it fair. I want people to be able to look at the brand and go, I could do that forever, hold it, sell it, whatever, but not have to close it, and it not be too expensive to enter, and it not be too expensive to manage on a monthly basis from a royalty perspective. So that's been one of the key things now as we look at it is, if I'm a franchisee wanting to build it, can I do it? Yep. Okay. And then as a franchisor, can I make it work profitability wise? And so we think that we found that in a couple of things, and we're exploring those.
I mean, so many things there, right? So sales volume, cost of entry, cash on cash ROI, and you want something unique, right? Yeah. Diving into the cash on cash ROI, and you look for 3 years, but it could be 4 or 5. Are we looking at recovery of, Are we basing that on sales or net profit?
Net profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're looking to recover that initial investment from profits within the first 3 to 4 years. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seems like it tends to be, if your sales, if your sales tend to be like a 6-month return. So if it's, take Tropical Smoothie, for example, if your return on investment there is a 3-year return, it costs $500,000 just for easy math. If it costs $500,000 to build, do $1 million average unit volume. A lot of brands, seems like that's kind of the metric, right? It's like a 6-month sales return if you had no expenses whatsoever, but about a 3-year to 4-year return on investment from a net profit perspective. So hopefully that answered your question.
No, it's a good framework, right? And then of course that folds into the item 19, and then that folds into how extensive is the item 19? Are we looking at company-owned outlets and what are franchise outlets? But for new franchisors, that's valuable.
Yeah.
Because we get to so many franchise sales websites, and they're like about the opportunity, and it's here's our franchise fee, here's our royalty. I'm like, okay, what, why is that good for me?
Yeah.
But it really gets down to, and of course there's limitations, but what is that unit economic story? What's the ROI story? I do advise our clients, you also need to know where your opportunity falls on the spectrum. Mm-hmm. Like, is it a lifestyle type franchise, supplemental income replacement, legacy building? It seems like your investments have gone from income replacement to now where you've scaled to legacy building, right?
Yeah.
I think about what makes a business unique is more about the execution. I mean, it'd be great to have a product or service no one else has, but the consistency, the execution, how they're doing it. Generally, what are you looking for when you say you're looking for something unique?
So for me, I'll just, kind of give a little bit of an overview of a franchise we're working to bring to market, and that it's a boutique men's and women's grooming establishment. And what's unique about that to me, this location in this franchise, well, soon to be franchise, is that when you walk in, it's totally different inside than anywhere else I've ever been. It feels high end. At the same time, it feels like really playful, and it feels like when I walk in, they take care of me like I'm an executive, and I don't walk in. I walk in like this, like a t-shirt, So, but it feels that executive feel, right? So it's to me, that feels unique. It's different than any of the other barbers. I mean, I've always grown up with barbers that do the shave, which is important to me. I really like that as a service in an establishment and a barbershop. But I've noticed that in the East Coast, it's hard to find. So when I was in the Navy, I was out in the West Coast for a little while, and it seemed like a lot of the barbershops did that. There was barbershops everywhere, and they all kind of offered that. On the East Coast, it doesn't feel like there's as many, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe it's just my area. Yeah. So it's been hard to find. And when I found this one, it felt like, man, this is okay. I'm so glad you're here, and some of the stuff we're looking at is basically being able to capitalize on that executive feel in that, in this new location we're working on. It's probably going to have this kind of backdoor entry where you can have like a private entry into a room where you can get your cut done, your beard shave, and be on about your way. And it's like basically zero road bumps, almost like going on a private flight somewhere. There's no TSA, you just walk onto the airplane. It's kind of going to get the same type of feeling where you just walk right in, get your hair cut. You're not waiting in line, you don't have to sign in. Everybody's waiting for you to get there. So to me, that feels unique. And I know that's only one brand specific, but hopefully that kind of answers your questions about the style of uniqueness, or maybe the type of uniqueness I'm looking for.
Well, I mean, it provides great insights, right? Because you're reflecting on your thought process as a multi-unit franchisee and as soon to be or potentially a franchisor. And for me, the takeaway for those that are joining us and watching this video is whatever it is you need to believe in unique. So you're talking about branding and operations, right? So there should be unique operational elements, your brand, your culture, but you have to live and believe it. And that's something that I think so many brands, when they franchise, they overlook it in the process. And there's usually, if you dig down, and we have a great workshop and masterclass on building or uncovering that brand story. It's there, right? But you have to dig down. Rylan, you mentioned something that's really important, which was churn, right?
Yeah.
Franchisors and franchisees in the system, you don't want to see churn. You want to see your franchisees in, you want to see them succeed. I love how you're referring to, you want to own something that you could sell and has value, but you don't want that churn. And ultimately, long-term success for franchisors is really EBITDA valuation, cash flow valuation from royalties as you grow. You want stable franchisees, successful franchisees, and you want to grow through your franchisees buying multiple locations, just like you. As you reflect on Tropical Smoothie, what are some of the things you could reflect on where as a franchisor, you could share like, hey, they did this right in helping their franchisees succeed, avoid that churn, and get to multi-unit ownership and expansion?
I would identify key leaders. What would be helpful is if you identify key franchisees in your system. So maybe they're leaders in the franchisee system. They're talking to other franchisees. Identify those people early on and look at them, because oftentimes when you go to sell a business in the franchise community, you talk to your franchisor first. You let them know what's going on. Not always, but a lot of times it seems to be that way. And you have your your franchise business leaders or franchise business consultants in the market talking to other franchisees. What I would do is I would identify franchisees, set them up for success by basically telling them about opportunities as they come for franchise growth, franchise acquisition, and potential territories too. But the acquisition piece is easy because you already have a business that's making dollars. So going to a bank and saying, hey, this makes $100,000. I'm going to buy it for 3.5x EBITDA. I just need the money for that. I'll put 20% down or whatever the terms are. But if you identify those franchisees that you want to grow with, it's going to make your life a lot easier if you can manage, let's say 10 people with 50 versus 100 people with 5. I think I did the math right there, but basically, I think you would be better off as long as you help them scale it. You show them. That's one of the things we lacked initially was what should the organization look like? The scaling of the organization. How many managers do you need? How many district managers do you need? So there's the joint employer issue you have to worry about. I get that, but having a template and a framework to say, we've seen success in this model, although you don't have to do it, but we see that success there. I think that could be really helpful instead of not making people figure it out on their own, but letting people figure it out on their own. I figured out the hard way in my opinion. We overpaid, we underpaid, we did all of it, everything. We're right in a sweet spot now, we think. So I think to answer your question, I think that would help. That would be helpful for your own franchise organization if you had some really good franchisees early on, or even in the system now, if you're 100, 200 units, that you go, hey, how can we consolidate this, make this less work on us?
So the advice you're sharing, I think, is very valuable, right? So we send out franchise agreements all day, every day, right? Our team's sending them out. And I think the biggest wins or victories is when the franchise agreements are going out to existing franchisees and you see multi-unit franchise ownership. And so the advice you're giving, which for franchisors, someone franchising their business, is focus on those early winners, focus on those franchisees, coach them to multi-unit ownership. We've seen instances where franchisors have suspended or paused franchise sales because they wanted to focus on their systems and focus on their franchisee support. And then we see the byproduct of that being that their franchise sales actually haven't gone down, but they've built up a list because their existing franchisees want to buy more locations.
Yeah, that seems like a little bit slower. It's like slower growth for a longer lasting relationship. So you give up, okay, yeah, you've got everybody beating down your door to buy franchises from you. So you can be more selective about who you bring in. But if you totally stop and say, hey, we're not going to sell anymore, let's just say as an example, we're not going to sell anymore, we're just going to sell to existing franchisees. You kind of put a little bit of leverage in their hands and franchisees' hands because they know potentially they might know that, well, they're only going to sell to franchisees, at least for now. But what you're going to get is franchisees that buy in and give you a better relationship overall. I mean, that's my take, right? It's like, yeah, those people you're going to end up having to trade out. If you're just bringing in new people into the system, you'll end up trading a lot of those out for existing franchisees that are already in the system. So why not just make your life easier instead of vetting and learning about the new franchisees, having to build this relationship? Because you're like marrying a new franchisee every time you do that.
Yeah, and I think too many brands are overlooking this advice. I mean, just reflecting, thinking about your 40 locations,
Yeah.
the efficiencies and economies of scale versus the franchisor having 40 more individual franchisees operating one location, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's, and for sure, I think emerging brands are overlooking the opportunity that I think you're highlighting really well, which is coach the well-performing franchisees to success, multi-unit ownership. You've reflected, and I think it's important, is you have to build that blueprint, right? Where they could keep hitting repeat.
Yeah.
And they know those unit economics in and out, and they're going to repeat the process.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'd almost forego if you could figure it out. I don't know, but just thinking about this, as a franchisor, put a franchisor hat on. If I went to my existing franchisee base and said, "Who wants to grow?" If half of them raise their hand, and I corner those half and say, if I gave you a discounted rate on a franchise agreement, like pretty significant. I get that franchise sales are part of the revenue driver. It's like if you went to them and said, I'll even incentivize you to grow this. I think you get even faster growth and collect royalty. That's what really matters, is the royalty side of it, not necessarily the one-time payment of this franchise fee.
I think it'd be a very unique path for an emerging brand. I think it's a secret, and it's a way to
You
grow.
think so?
No, I mean, it'll be funny. We'll put in the title of this when it goes up, multi-unit franchisee shares secrets to franchising, but this is a real secret, Rylan. No, because it is. And everyone gets enamored with, let me sell the franchise, get involved with brokers, sell.
Yeah.
And then they're overlooking that big opportunity, which is these franchisees are trusting their future with you. Some could be superstars. Some could be that next 40 unit franchisee, and we're not giving them the opportunity to succeed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Rylan, for someone watching, right, and they're questioning, am I ready to franchise my business? And I know there's a ton of things here. What would be like the 5 checklist items you'd say you should have these 3 things or these 5 things before you make that step?
Okay, so I think like a really sound operations manual, I think would be key. So like a playbook for your brand. Are you saying in this scenario, Charles, is somebody already have a location open that they're operating?
I'm saying someone who's about to franchise or even just started franchising.
Yeah. Okay. I'd build a really sound operational handbook and playbook that you could go, like, that's a brand standard book. It's like, we do this because of this, right? It's not every, and maybe your brand is that every unit is unique. I mean, that's okay too, but just write it into the handbooks, have some kind of guidance for it. So I'd make sure your operations are buttoned up. So as people come to you, the worst thing would be, or one of the worst things, I guess, would be if franchisees come to you and then ask you questions and you go, well, I don't really know. It's like, that's okay. That's okay too. We all learn, but it's like, I don't know. Have your operation handbook totally buttoned up. Have a good year of sales that you can reflect on. Cause I mean, one of the pillars here that you're going to be selling is average unit volume, or, a sales volume that people can look at and go, that's profitable. If I put that here, if I mirror that here, I'll do well. So have a unit that has good sales that you could reference as your item 19. Have a really good pathway and template for profitability. So know exactly how your P&L works and operates, meaning we know to the hour and the number of people that we bring on shift based on this sales volume. So know exactly what your labor is going to be. I think here's a big one. This would actually go a long way. If you get a inventory process set up in the beginning, you'll benefit from better profitability long term. by inventorying your, food and waste, whatever else you have there, maybe it's retail, but have an inventory system that allows you to really in fine detail manage your inventory, and allows you to really have a small spread as a variance from your theoretical versus actual cost of goods. So I think that will go a really long way. That's so beneficial, and to have that part all mapped out for somebody, a franchisee, that'll go a long way. I think that's probably what, 3 or 4.
No, I think those are great, right? We have playbook, strong item 19, right? So you had that good year. Know your P&L, right?
Yeah.
And then inventory, and right next to it, and you discussed inventory management. My notes are inventory, technology, operational efficiency. What I love about what you just described, Rylan, is I think franchise buyers, when they're evaluating franchise opportunities, want to know, how do I do it? Can I do it? And franchisors need to demonstrate that. And that's exactly what you just went through. So for you, inventory management is really important. Well, maybe we're not an inventory driven business. What's the technology? What's the call center?
That's a good point. Yeah.
What operational points, technology tools are you, franchisor, going to give me that'll help me do this, create efficiencies, and help my bottom line? And I think that's what you're communicating, and that's powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of manpower work that gets put in early on. And that's what you're selling. That's what you're buying as a franchisee. You go into the system, you want to have that stuff already. You don't want to be figuring that out on your own. You want it to already be existing if you can.
And you want to be focused on it. I mean, there's so many franchise consultants, franchise marketing experts.
Yeah.
Everything looks the same. They all sound the same. We're going to provide training, but no one's showing the franchisee, here's our business model. Here's unique elements. And they don't need to be so unique. It could be revenue per customer, membership model.
Yeah.
It could be operational elements, and then how we're executing on the operations.
Yeah, exactly.
I know there's a lot ahead, Rylan. So I'm looking forward to keeping in touch. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we spoke originally, was closer to the COVID stuff. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget, so we did a FranX episode with Nick Powell's. And Nick and I have discussed you a number of times, because you're a direct example of what works in franchising. And so I'm looking forward to what comes next, because I think what's made you a great multi-unit franchisee is going to make you a great franchisor out there.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I think my approach has always been approaching things as a student and trying to be as humble as you can, right? It's like, do you do jujitsu at all? Do you roll? Have you ever done anything like that?
I wish I did. You have your one wheel behind you. I do have a wiffle ball. I mean, the only thing I have.
Well, you hear a lot about that, right? It's like, if you can get choked out, it's like, the rest of your day is okay. It's like doing a hard workout in the morning, the rest of your day is gonna be okay. But it also teaches a little bit of humble ability, right? So just being humble, knowing that there's always somebody better, there's always somebody bigger, there's always somebody faster, stronger, it doesn't matter, smarter. And being humble about that, always having that student hat on, approaching things like that, like you don't know everything. And that's, for me, I mean, I've had a lot of luck. A lot of luck and patience. Luck and patience. Those two things together have given me success and a really supportive family. And now that we've got a really great team now. So now it's just been finding really great leaders that have been able to continue to help us execute on the vision. So there's nothing special about what we're doing here other than just the simple basic stuff, man. Just being humble, being a student all the time, learning.
Rylan, I appreciate it. I'm proud that, you're being very modest. And what I love, and I'm proud of our country is it's no coincidence that your experience in the military and you being a veteran. To me, it all ties together, how you're doing things, how you're building up a team and leadership. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate everything you shared with us today.
I appreciate it, Charles. Thank you.
Thanks, Rylan.